Hey guys, how's it going? So today I'm just going to briefly talk about hormones, and I'm going to introduce hormones to you guys. So hormones are chemical messengers, and these guys travel by blood, and they carry a message to different organs of your body. Like, so for example, and I've used this before, testosterone is a hormone that's made in the testes. It travels through the blood. It travels from one location, which is in the testes, to another location, which is like your voice box if you're male, and it makes your voice deepen, or your muscles and it makes your muscles grow, or your hair and it makes hair grow, right? That's how hormones work. Chemical messengers, okay? And the amount of hormone you make depends on your DNA. So some people make more testosterone, some people make less. Depends on your DNA how much of these chemical messengers you're actually going to make, right? So that is what a hormone is. And so basically you have to know there are that these hormones, right? They have multiple effects on your body, and there's all these hormones that you need to know for this unit, and these hormones are responsible for what we call, I don't know why this keeps doing it, so annoying, negative feedback. So negative feedback just means like you're restoring your body to homeostasis or like balance, okay? So hormones are responsible for balance in your body through a process called negative feedback. So basically I'll show you, like, let's say you have an increase in, I don't know, body temperature. Okay, well, if your body temperature becomes too high, you're gonna have a problem, right? So what you want to do is you eventually want to activate like your brain. So you want to activate your brain, and the brain is going to tell you to decrease your body temperature. It's going to tell you to do this by sweating or doing things like that. So you can see that if you have an increase in body temperature, right, your brain is going to tell you to decrease your body temperature to prevent death. And your brain is going to tell you to do this by telling your body to sweat and release the heat like that, right? Now, this is what we call a negative feedback, because a negative feedback just means you end up with the negative or the opposite of what you began with. So if you start with an increase in body temperature and you end up with a decrease in body temperature, that is a negative feedback, because you end up with the opposite or the negative of what you started with. So that's how that works, right? Negative feedback. So hormones are responsible for maintaining homeostasis or balance in your body. And if there's too much of a hormone, then your body always works to make sure you decrease that hormone so that you can always maintain this like homeostasis, this balance in your body, right? Now, hormones are slower to act than nerves. So like a nerve impulse is very quick. It can be instantaneous, like when you put your finger on a stove and it's like a millisecond and then you remove. Like the effect of testosterone on the body is years and years, and then is maintained for the rest of a person's life, right? I mean, without testosterone, a male wouldn't be able to make sperm, or wouldn't be able to develop any kind of muscle or anything, right? So you need to continue to produce testosterone for the rest of your life. So it's a slow and steady kind of approach. That's how hormones take, versus a nerve impulse, which is fast and instantaneous. Okay, so that is a hormone. It's a chemical messenger, right? What hormones do, right? Like the hormones that you guys are required to know are quite a bit. You need to know the part of your brain that is responsible for the release of hormones, and we're gonna take a look at which parts of your body are responsible for making hormones. So you can imagine, like, here's this person over here. This is the person's brain. There's a structure in the person's brain called the hypothalamus. And this hypothalamus is connected to the pituitary gland. Okay, so the hypothalamus is made up of nerves, and the pituitary gland is made up of hormones. And so the nerves in the hypothalamus control the pituitary gland, the release of hormones from the pituitary gland. So the nerves control the release of hormones. So basically your brain is telling your pituitary gland when to release the hormone, what hormone to release in response to like your body, always trying to maintain that balance. So that pituitary gland has hormones, and then you have other hormones in your body. So imagine this is your neck. You have a gland here called the thyroid gland. That thyroid gland produces a hormone, and the thyroid gland, this right here, is another gland that's found within the thyroid gland. It's called the parathyroid gland. So just so that you know, the thyroid gland produces the hormone thyroxine, and the parathyroid gland is a separate gland. They thought at once that the thyroid and the parathyroid were the same gland, but they're not. The parathyroid gland produces parathyroid hormone. So the parathyroid gland is a different gland than the thyroid gland, and the thyroid gland produces also the hormone calcitonin. Okay, so thyroxine and calcitonin are made by the thyroid gland, and the parathyroid gland makes a parathyroid hormone. And the pituitary gland, you guys, makes a ton of hormones. These are the hormones of the pituitary gland. I use this mnemonic to help remember them. The hormones of the pituitary gland are, I just remember HAT, PFL. They're going to be HGH, ACTH, TSH, prolactin, FSH, and LH are all the hormones produced by the pituitary gland. Also produced by the pituitary gland are ADH and oxytocin. So there's a ton of hormones, okay, that the pituitary gland makes. And you do have to know what each one of these hormones actually do in your body, okay? And so that's a lot, but we got to get through it. Okay, so now there is the thyroid and the parathyroid gland. Now you got to know, okay, your pancreas, okay, also contains hormones, and your pancreas makes the hormones insulin and glucagon. And so your pancreas is found connected to your stomach. So I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not going to draw it. So there's the pancreas. And remember, in Bio 20, the pancreas makes enzymes, and it releases enzymes to digest your food. Well, not only does the pancreas release enzymes to digest your food, it also releases hormones, and these hormones are essential in regulating blood sugar, okay? Now you also have, this is a kidney, this is another kidney, okay? So this is a kidney, this is another kidney, and on top of your kidney there is the adrenal gland, and the adrenal gland on top of your kidney, and you have to imagine that your kidneys are found in your lower back, okay? And that these adrenal glands are responsible for the hormones cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine, and the hormone aldosterone. Okay, so there's more hormones that you guys got to know what they do, and that all of these are going to be discussed next week, where I'm going to go through all the hormones like in one big lesson, trying to get it through to you. And then when we get to reproduction, you guys, then you're going to have to know the ovaries in females, the hormones they make, FSH and LH, and also the testes, which are also influenced by FSH and LH. So the ovaries actually make estrogen in females, and the testes make testosterone in males. Okay, so there you have it. That is all the glands in your body that you need to know that make hormones. So just to recap, the pituitary gland makes all these hormones here. The thyroid gland, the parathyroid gland, the pancreas, the adrenal glands, and the ovaries and testes, okay? These all produce these chemical messengers that send a message to different parts of your body to do different functions, okay? What we're going to take a look at right now is we're going to take a closer look at the hypothalamus pituitary. Okay, so if you take a look, this upper part here is the hypothalamus, okay? And then I'm going to draw the lower part of this is going to be the pituitary gland, okay? The pituitary gland is actually separated into an anterior and posterior pituitary. So the anterior pituitary is at the front. So this would be the anterior or the front pituitary gland. And then the back pituitary gland, okay? You can see this, look. You can see there's like a difference in the way the front pituitary and the back pituitary gland work. So this is the posterior pituitary, or the back part of the pituitary gland. And what I just drew here, which kind of look funny, are like neurons. And here's a neuron here. And you can see that in the posterior pituitary, the neuron extends all the way into from the hypothalamus into the posterior pituitary. So like, you guys imagine like this is like the demarcation, or like that is like, so anything above here is the hypothalamus, and anything below here is the pituitary gland. So all of this on the top is hypothalamus, and all here on the bottom is pituitary. You guys can see that in the anterior pituitary in the front, the neurons are just exclusively located in the hypothalamus, whereas in the posterior pituitary, the neurons extend from the hypothalamus into the pituitary. So there's a real distinction between what the anterior and the posterior pituitary look like. And there's different hormones that you need to know that each release, okay? So there's like these blood vessels, okay? So there's these blood vessels that are traveling, because hormones travel by blood. They're chemical messengers that travel by blood. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers as well. I talked about that, but they travel just between a synapse from one neuron to the next, okay? Okay, so anyways, what you need to know for this is, you can see that in the anterior pituitary, what I'm drawing here is what I call an endocrine cell. I call this an endocrine cell because each one of these cells produces a different hormone. So I'm going to say like these ones in orange produce the HGH hormone. I'm going to say these ones in green produce a TSH hormone. I'm going to say these ones in, I don't know, gray produce ACTH hormone. You can see that there's all these different hormones that are being made by the posterior pituitary, by the anterior pituitary, whereas in the posterior pituitary, there's only 2 hormones. So we're gonna color one hormone. The hormone here is gonna be ADH, and the other hormone that's released here is gonna be oxytocin, okay? There are other, remember I just said, like all the pituitary hormones, HAT, PFL, and then I said ADH and oxytocin. All of these guys, all of these are pituitary hormones. The thing is we're not going to be dealing with these ones yet because these are done in reproduction. All I'm dealing with right now are these ones, which are not reproduction. They don't have anything to do with reproducing. So that's the HGH, that's the ACTH, and that's the TSH, okay? And you can see that all of these hormones that I put in HAT PFL, these are all anterior pituitary hormones. So that just means that all these hormones are produced by the anterior pituitary, whereas ADH and oxytocin are produced by the posterior pituitary, okay? Okay, now it's really important that you guys understand that in these neurons produce like these releasing factors. So this could be a TSH releasing factor, and a releasing factor is called a releasing factor because let's say like the brain sends an impulse to the hypothalamus. So there's all these neurons in the brain that are connected to these neurons in the hypothalamus. So let's say this neuron in the brain says, hey, you need to release this TSH-RF. This TSH-RF travels through the blood, and the function of the RF, the releasing factor, the TSH-RF, is to release the TSH. So the TSH-RF activates the endocrine cell here, like this endocrine cell, and it's basically telling it to release the TSH. And then the TSH is released into the bloodstream, and then it goes where it's supposed to go, in this case, the thyroid, right? Another one that, let's say, like here's another neurotransmitter. Let's say the brain says, hey, you need to release another releasing factor like ACTH-RF. Well, guess what this ACTH-RF releases? It releases the ACTH. That's found in the anterior pituitary. So you guys, like, if you look at the anterior pituitary, The anterior pituitary needs releasing hormones to release the actual hormone, but the posterior pituitary doesn't. Like you can see here, here's HGH, right? HGH is found in the anterior pituitary. In order to release the HGH from the endocrine cell, you need to first release the HGHRF, the releasing factor. It's sometimes called releasing hormone. So your brain is going to tell you, hey, HGH stands for human growth hormone. Your brain is going to tell you, hey, you need to grow. So you want to release the HGHRF. The HGHRF travels through the blood, and it stimulates the release of HGH into your bloodstream, so now it can go to all the cells of your body. Okay, so an RF, the releasing factors right here, are located in the hypothalamus, okay? So these neurons release releasing factors. The releasing factors function to release the actual hormone from the endocrine cells in the anterior pituitary. You can see that in the posterior pituitary, the neuron extends all the way into, into the posterior pituitary. So this ADH that's made is actually released directly into the bloodstream. There is no RF required to release this ADH into the bloodstream. It's just a neuron in your brain tells you to release ADH. And ADH is responsible for water regulation, and you learned about that in Science 10. So you can see oxytocin is also a posterior pituitary hormone, but we don't talk about oxytocin until we get to reproduction. Okay, so the only posterior pituitary hormone you need to know for this unit is ADH. And ADH does not require a releasing factor, okay, because it's not in the anterior pituitary. It's part of the posterior or back pituitary gland, okay? So basically, we're going to talk about the feedback loop associated with ADH very quickly. Let's say you have a decrease of water in your body. If you have a decrease of water in your body, your brain, right, has like these osmoreceptors. So like you're going to have like these osmoreceptors. And these osmoreceptors are detecting like these water levels in your blood. And the brain is going to tell you to release the ADH from the anterior pituitary. And when you release the ADH from the anterior pituitary, ADH targets your kidneys. And ADH actually causes an increase in water reabsorption. So what does that mean? That means what ADH does is it keeps water in the blood. Now, that means if you keep the water in your blood, that means you're peeing less, okay? Because you're, instead of peeing the water out, you're keeping the water in your body. And that's because you've lost water. Like you are dehydrated, like you worked out and you are dehydrated, there's no water. So what does your body do? It tries to conserve the water. So, there's all these osmoreceptors that detect the fact that you have low water. It's going to send a signal to your brain, and your brain is going to tell your posterior pituitary. Why did I write anterior? Wrong. It's going to tell your posterior pituitary to release ADH. ADH is released, it targets your kidney, and it increases water reabsorption, so it keeps the water in your blood. And so you can see that ADH is a chemical messenger. Okay, it is a chemical messenger. It sends a message to your kidney and it tells your kidney, hey, keep the water in the body. Okay, and that's basically all you know. And so when you have a decrease in water and then you end up with an increase in water, like you can see, that is an example of a negative feedback because you end up with the negative or the opposite of what you began with. Okay, like normally, guys, this is more detailed than what I've just done for you. But I'm trying to keep this short and sweet and simple. I usually go into hypertonic and hypotonic with ADH, but for this year, I'm not going to do that. And, hopefully this is enough for you to be adequate for your next year university course. Okay, so that's it for me. I'm done all my lessons for this week, and I hope that helps. Okay, bye.